welcome to the Jeet Kune Dialogues open Q&A. This is episode number, I think this is 192, with yours truly. I am going to see who logs in and see what questions we can field from the audience. Otherwise, I will talk about a couple things that have been going on in the Jeet Kune world of lately, and then get myself off the dialogues and go start the weekend. So while you're logging in, if you'd be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button and feel free to continue doing so throughout the dialogue. If you'd like to support the program, visit jkdrebel.com, click on the Rebel Gear link, and that's where you'll see stuff like this, the Keep Calm and Learn to Fight Ferociously t-shirt, available long sleeve, short sleeve. Gear Bubble tells me that they're doing something different now with the hoodies. So the zippered hoodie isn't available right now, but they do have it pullover hoodies, and also the infamous coffee mug and what have you. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share this video and spread the word about the Jeet Kune Dialogues. I probably should not have called it dialogues, since it might just be me. But in any case, and let me, before we get any further, let me check here. Next Friday, we should be on with Sean Davis. That's going to be a good one. I can tell. I've watched. I've taken a look at some of the stuff that he puts out there, and even though we've never met, I'm sure I'm going to have a great time with him. So let's see. So Mark David Collins is here. Hey Mark. Bill Matucci's here. The real Rick Brochure. Hey Pedro Rodriguez up in Palm Beach. Let's see. All right, so, well, I can tell you guys, right, because he probably won't put it in question form, but I was talking with Bill Matucci, my senior, earlier today, and as always, Bill made some really good points about, the whole Jeet Kune aspect, and he was saying that a lot of times it's like having Bill, if I get this wrong, right, be sure to correct me. He says it's like having something as your major, and then you can have other subjects. You can have another subject as your minor, and then you can have other subjects as your electives. And so if you apply that to the martial art world, generally, or if you apply it specifically to the Jeet Kune world, right? You could have Jeet Kune as your major. You could minor in so if I use a personal example, I could minor in Filipino Kali, and then my electives could be stuff like Muay Thai, or French Savate, or Penjak Silat, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, stuff like that. But Jeet Kune remains the major, the area of study, the subject or the topic in which you eventually get your degree. And I think that that was an excellent point, and I really thank Bill for chiming in and expressing it to me that way. I think it was with him, because I talk to so many of my JKD seniors on a weekly basis. It's a lot like religion. Well, in terms of the way that people have their religious arguments, is a lot like the way that we have our JKD arguments. When in religion, everybody has Abraham in common, and so in JKD, we all have Bruce Lee in common. And when we talk about JKD, I don't even really like using the term argument, if you know what I mean, right? I prefer to use the term discussion, or maybe even debate, or what have you, right? My good friend Bob Landers will always say that, actually, but there it is, right? I was just going to mention you, Bob. Bob Landers will always make a joke that JKD is a religion, or that it's like a religion, and then I make the joke back that, yeah, because there's a pope of Jeet Kune, and then there's gurus in Jeet Kune, and what have you. So I guess to a certain degree, when you have a charismatic leader, right? So you have uh, uh, Jesus as the charismatic leader during his time, and then he passes away in the 30s, and in his 30s, and then other people pick up the mantle and they become known, they become celebrities in that world. Well, something very, very similar is what happened here in the Jeet Kune Do world. Um, Bruce Lee died in his 30s, and then we had a number of individuals who had spent time with him, and they came on, and they went on to promote the teachings and further the learning amongst the people who were interested in what Bruce Lee had to say, what Bruce Lee had to bring to the martial art world. So it's not surprising that there are disagreements or factions or or what have you. Um, it's not surprising at all when you understand it. And so just like people have to do a lot of in-depth study of biblical teachings, right, of religious teachings, it's kind of the same thing here in JKD. There's tons of reading material, and so there's going to be interpretations of the reading material. Different people are going to get different stuff from it. Um, one very recent, earlier today, discussion was the whole thing about the 5 ways of attack. You know, that in I'll use terms with which people are familiar, right? So the contention is that in the Jeet Kune Do concepts world, the term simple was replaced by the word simple was replaced by the word single. And so what Bruce Lee wrote as simple attack, simple direct attack, simple angular attack, was replaced by the word single. And so it became single direct attack or single angular attack. Now, you can stay on the surface and debate that point and argue that. And you can say, well, Bruce Lee wrote this. And so since Bruce Lee wrote it, that's the way it is, and it's not subject to interpretation. Do you see how biblical that can be, right? If it's written in the Bible this way, then the Bible is non-errant, and so this is the only way to look at it. But Bruce Lee also wrote that any direct or indirect attack composed or comprised of a single movement is a simple attack. So it's called simple attack. The definition of simple is not, in this context, is not so much uncomplicated. That's like the regular dictionary definition. Simple means uncomplicated. I dare say that the Jeet Kune Do definition of simple, right, is single, because Bruce Lee wrote all direct and indirect attacks comprised of a single movement are simple attacks. So in that context, simple and single can mean the same thing. Therefore, I see how it's easy for somebody to start calling it this versus that. And it's not done maliciously. In the same way, and I should mention this also, because a lot of you guys who are on Facebook, you see us having the discussions back and forth. So I'm going to make this statement I've probably made a similar statement in the past, but I'll make it again. Just like I said in the opening, we all have Bruce Lee and therefore Jeet Kune in common. If I happen to disagree with my good friend Bob Landers or my good friend Richard Torres, it is just disagreement. That's it. It doesn't mean that I don't respect or value their journey in Jeet Kune, their contributions to Jeet Kune. We might just happen to disagree on certain things. If we analyze that, so I just mentioned 3 people, right? Myself, Bob Landers, and Richard Torres. Arguing, we don't argue, we discuss a thing called Jeet Kune. Well, that's 3 out of how many Jeet Kune people having a go at each other. And then if we think about all the people around the world who are involved in Jeet Kune, who might end up having a go at each other, what percentage of the population of the world is that? What I'm saying is it's actually fairly ridiculous, right? It's not that big a deal. So if I call it single direct attack, if I was raised being told that it's single direct attack, and then one day Richard Torres writes something on Facebook that says, well, Bruce Lee never called it single. Bruce Lee called it simple. And I go, oh, I never noticed that. And I go, oh, Richard's onto something. But then I read further, and I read where Bruce Lee says, well, simple is a single movement. Then I come back and I go, oh, well, okay, I see how somebody may have interpreted one for the other. And now the whole matter to me is now dissolved. So there's no need to go back to that, bring it up again as some kind of argument, unless you're trying to prove that somebody's right and somebody's wrong. And it's not that. What did Bruce Lee say? Bruce Lee said the difference between hard style Kung Fu and soft style Kung Fu is not 2. So I think that we could extrapolate, if that's the right word, and go the difference between what they call original Jeet Kune and what's known as Jeet Kune concepts is not 2. I think I haven't seen it yet. But I think Richard recently put up a post that says something like, you cannot do Jeet Kune concepts without the original, but you can do the original without concepts, something like that, right? And I would agree with that. There's no way that you could, for example, the concept of economy of motion. There's no way that you could make a study of associated JKD associated disciplines, as I have borrowed that phrase from Salem Astley. There's no way that if I study Muay Thai, that without training in Jeet Kune, in the idea, the concept, the principle of economy of motion, I may never have come across that in Muay Thai. Right? Okay, so let me make sure you understand what I'm saying. Because maybe in Muay Thai, they don't emphasize economy of motion. Muay Thai is, I think most people would agree, Muay Thai is pretty much a rear weapon or a rear limb dependent system. The rear elbow is a big deal. The rear knee is a big deal. The rear round kick is also a big deal, right? So I can pick up anything that I'm interested in studying, but I have to make sure that and this is a word, I have to make sure that I JKDI's it. Bruce Lee JKDI'd boxing to a certain degree. He JKDI'd fencing to a certain degree. So we could look at it as he started the ball rolling. So now if I decide that I want to go past and look at something else, because I don't know that it's written anywhere. In fact, boxing and fencing, because Bruce Lee wrote that his system was going to be based on Wing Chun and boxing and fencing. And then at one point, what I guess what is accurate for some people to call the latter stage Jeet Kune, a lot of the Wing Chun stuff seemed to have been gotten rid of, right? You will hear people say Wing Chun is out, or Chi Sao is out, or what have you. So then I guess maybe it was what, the boxing and fencing, but we know that Bruce Lee kicked a lot, or right? So so something else had to be in there, since there is no kicking in boxing and there is no kicking in fencing. So something else had to be in there. So I don't think it's written anywhere specifically that says in the study of Jeet Kune, you must limit yourself to only the study of Wing Chun, only the study of boxing, and only the study of fencing. In fact, in Bruce Lee's notes, there's what? Studies on judo, jujitsu, aikido, or whatever. So we could take that as license to investigate these things. And you might get to the point where instead of investigation into specific arts, you become an investigator into the motions, the principles of these things, right? Now, if you happen to be a person that enjoys going from instructor to instructor on an almost daily basis, right, to learn from this guy and learn from that guy, then what the heck, right? If you can afford to do it, if your lifestyle, right, your finances, whatever, allow you to do that, then you go ahead and do it. That's not hurting anybody. That would be, like Bill Matucci said earlier, that would be like your electives. It doesn't necessarily detract from your major. You still have to spend time in your major, right? So I guess how should I put this, right? There's so much out there in the world of martial art that it seems almost kind of ridiculous to limit yourself to just one or two particular things, unless, of course, that's your desired approach. If you're only interested in a couple of things, then fine, right? But if somebody else is interested in more than a couple of things, then let them have fun. Let them do their thing, as long as they're not hurting anybody or what have you, right? So I envision a day where here on Facebook we will not have these. We'll have discussions of a different nature. Now it might take some doing, because there are a lot of new people coming into the JKD world on a daily basis. I mean, literally on a daily basis. We when I say we, I mean the other I Love Jeet Kune moderators and we take a look at requests for membership and what have you. People are required to agree to not be idiots as members of the group, and then if we find that you are being an idiot, then, well, I think the other two moderators, they just tend to get rid of you. I'm kidding, right? I tend to give you like a warning or something, right? But there are new people coming into JKD all the time, and so some of them might not be aware that their points of view are points of view that have been exhausted for decades. It's new to them, and they're not aware that it's not new to other people in the Jeet Kune Do world. And so sometimes I guess these old things will come up. So for example, right, for the past few days, what is it that has reared its head again? The whole absorb what is useful thing. Who said it? Who didn't say it? Who put it up in his school? Who used it for whatever. You can look at the specifics of it. Did Bruce Lee write it? Did Bruce Lee say it? It's found nowhere in his notes. Okay. Um, just like Bill Matucci gave me a new way of looking at it. If I mess this up, I apologize in advance. But I think it was Juan Ortega. I'm pretty sure it was him. But he said something about the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. So my interpretation of that is this. So Bruce Lee never wrote the exact words, absorb what is useful. So that is the letter of the law. But can you read anything about Bruce Lee's approach to martial art? Any of Bruce Lee's personal writings about his approach to martial art, and say that the phrase absorb what is useful would not apply to his way of thinking? That then would be the spirit of the law. So it's not written anywhere, the letter of the law, but the idea, the mentality, the mindset, the spirit of the law is very evident. So it depends on how you want to approach these topics. If you want to, if you're somebody who want to be what we would call in the islands hard ears, right? If you're adamant that if it's not written, then it doesn't apply, I dare say there's a lot of stuff that Bruce Lee might not have written. We don't know because we weren't there. We can't say that the only stuff that Bruce Lee ever wrote, the only thoughts that Bruce Lee ever had are the ones that are recorded somewhere. We don't know that. We cannot know that. But that's right now neither here nor there. The important thing is, actually, let me just say this. So almost every week I conduct a little kind of Facebook experiment. I'll make a post because what I want to see is the quality of understanding that that people have and I identify that by the quality of their comments or their replies. And so I can kind of tell who's serious about Jeet Kune, who has an in-depth understanding about Jeet Kune, who is adamant that he knows more about Jeet Kune and about Bruce Lee than anybody else, right? And so on and so on. I get a feel for these things from the way that people will comment or the way that they will reply, and it's all very interesting. You can see who is interested in learning more versus who thinks that they've learned everything that there is to learn. They know everything that there is to know, and on and on. And very often it's the ones who behave as if they know everything are the ones who have spent the shortest amount of time, right, in the art. These are the ones that came along in the era, I guess, of the internet, and so a lot of their Jeet Kune knowledge comes from the internet. And then, so wait, let me just check here and see who else. So, okay, all right. So there's no question. All right, so I'm just gonna tell you this, and then I'm gonna call this quits. What was I gonna tell you? Oh shoot, Russell, help me! I just lost my train of thought. All right. Anyhow. Oh yeah, now I remember. I don't have a picture of it, but here's what I want to tell you. A couple of things, actually. That's funny, Russell. Right? A couple of things. People really need some people really need to lighten up when it comes to Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune. They need to be able to take a joke, right? Some probably even need to be able to make a joke when it comes to Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune. Yes, in some contexts, Jeet Kune can be a matter of life or death. Yes, but here, going back and forth with each other on the internet, I don't think Jeet Kune is a life or death matter. So some people really need to ease up. Somebody did put up a Photoshop of fight in position Bruce Lee from Enter the Dragon, and they photoshopped it on top of Bruce Lee's and Brandon Lee's gravesite. As soon as I saw it, I go, wow, that's pretty cool. It looks like a figurine has been added. It was a pretty decent Photoshop. Looks like a figurine has been added to the grave sites, right? So I pictured that, like real life in Seattle. And then also I go, and the guy chose an on guard position. So it looks like Bruce Lee is standing guard over his own grave and the grave of his son. Well, a ton of people went off on that posting about how disrespectful it is putting something over Bruce Lee's grave. And I thought to myself, how can it be disrespectful to put an image of the guy who is in the ground, to put his image at his gravesite? So you're saying that the figure of Bruce Lee is disrespecting the burial place of Bruce Lee and Brandon Lee. I don't know, kind of ridiculous to me. But this is what I mean about people not being able to take a joke, not being able to look beyond these ideas. I mean, it's like, I don't know, when did Bruce Lee ever ask anybody to defend his honor? Bruce Lee's life, Bruce Lee's accomplishments during his short life will stand and speak for themselves. We really don't need internet warriors to be defending his honor. Give me a break, right? So that's pretty much it that I have for you guys today. I want to keep doing this Q&A thing, but I think that I'm gonna have to talk to my podcast advisors, right, to ask them how to make an announced Q&A, Jeet Kune Q&A session, how to make it more, I have an idea of how to make it more involved, but yeah. So, all right. So I think I'll cut this here for today, guys. I told you next Friday, I'll be on with Sean Davis, and that's going to be a good one. If you have any ideas about how I should format this, now I feel like Brian Stelter. If you have any ideas about how I should format the open Q&A, right? Maybe I should advertise it for a little bit longer, right? In order to get people more excited or more involved in it. Drop me a line, jkdrebel@gmail.com, or yeah, that's probably the best place to do that. And we'll probably have a monthly Q&A going forward from here. Right now for Jeet Kune Dialogues, I'm pretty much booked into December. So we'll see how this goes. All right, so thanks for hanging out with me for a little while here. Guys, enjoy, have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon. Take care.